What is up, everybody? Shwazy here, and in today's video we're talking the latest updates on the all-new 2024 Dodge Charger Daytona. Alright, so many of you may have already seen the latest updates that came out in regards to the Dodge Charger Daytona. That is the next generation Dodge electric vehicle that's replacing the Charger and the Challenger. And over the last couple days, there's been some pretty big leaks or information that's come out that I wanted to share with all of you, but also give you a little bit of a different perspective than what I'm sure a lot of you are seeing in the comments and in general discussions about this next generation vehicle. I really don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be, at least based on what you see in the comments, which is usually the most extreme versions of people's opinions. Now, the first thing I want to address is the latest post that Dodge made about a day or so ago, where it showed off a little teaser video of the exhaust of this new Dodge Charger Daytona. Now, just to do a quick refresher, the Daytona is the electric version, so there's going to be a 2- and 4-door version. It's going to be called the Dodge Charger Daytona in the RT trim or the Dodge Charger Daytona in the RT Scat Pack trim. So those are the two options for the EV, and then later on in the beginning of next year, or possibly middle of next year, depending on whether they're delayed in producing them, there's going to be an inline 6-cylinder version with the Hurricane engine, and that one is going to be called the Dodge Charger 6-Pack. I believe that one will also have a 2- or 4-door configuration. They'll all have all-wheel drive, and so those are the different variants that are coming out. Now, the one that was particularly teased yesterday was the Charger Daytona, which means it was the electric version. And if you guys don't know what Dodge has been planning with this vehicle, they've been wanting to integrate, or I should say they've patented an exhaust sound for their electric vehicles. Now, I'm not quite sure if that means that no other vehicle can do an exhaust sound. I don't think that's quite true, because the Ioniq 5N also has a type of exhaust sound simulated in their electric vehicles. But for whatever reason, maybe it's a specific muscle car sound that Dodge has a patent on, and they gave us the first, probably most realistic teaser of this sound. There was a teaser a couple years ago, but it wasn't as realistic as yesterday's sound clip. And I'm going to throw it up on the screen right now so you guys can take a listen and see what you think of it if you haven't seen it already. So my initial reaction is, I think it sounds pretty good. It almost has a little bit of like a supercharger whine in the beginning, and I think there was rumors that it's supposed to be even louder than a Hellcat exhaust. And Dodge calls this the Fratzonic exhaust system, and they say it's not just a speaker, it's actually an amplifier that uses the sound going through the motors, and it amplifies it to make it sound a little bit louder. I'm not quite sure exactly the engineering of it, and if that's changed since they initially released this a couple years ago. But anyways, it does sound pretty good. Now, at first glance, I almost thought this may be the inline 6 Hurricane engine, but it sounds just a little bit too simulated. It doesn't sound exactly like what you would expect an internal combustion engine to sound like, especially as it's passing you by. And also, Dodge did mention in the hashtags that this is hashtag Charger Daytona, which means this is the electric vehicle. And lastly, if you pause it at the right spot, you can kind of see a little bit of a faint line across the hood. And that is the R-wing design that they've included in their Daytonas and their electric vehicles. And it's essentially an air inlet that kind of goes over the hood and makes the vehicle more aerodynamic. You're not going to have that on the 6-pack because naturally you're going to want to fit an engine in that section. There's no frunk or anything like that in the 6-pack version, and so it doesn't have that. And in the video, you can kind of see a faint line showing you that there's probably an R-wing on the particular vehicle they're showing off. But in any case, I think it sounds pretty good. I know a lot of people in the comments destroyed it. They say it doesn't sound like a V8, yada, yada, yada. But honestly, I'm all for advancing engineering, making something creative and new. I've driven some electric vehicles with an internal sound. As you're accelerating the vehicle, it kind of pipes in a sound, a futuristic sound to it. It's not like an engine exhaust. It sounds a little bit different. And it makes the experience more exhilarating and more fun. And I'm all for making electric vehicles more fun to drive. And I think this is one example of that. And I also think it'd be an interesting opportunity to pipe in different sounds. Like maybe you can pay for the sound of a Viper inside of your Dodge Charger Daytona, or the sound of a Hellcat. Like there's so much you can do with software, unless it truly is strictly the sound coming from the electric motors, which I'm a little skeptical on that. But in any case, you could probably have a switch where it turns on the speaker versus it turning on the amplifier, and maybe you could change depending on what mood you're in. And it's also nice that you could turn it off. There have been so many times where I'm trying to get home and I don't want to wake anybody. it'd be nice to shut off your exhaust and be quiet. So there are some benefits to having a speaker system for your exhaust. And again, it is going to make the experience more exhilarating to drive. I've experienced that firsthand in electric vehicles I've driven. When they have a sound, they are funner to drive than those without a sound. Now, the next and bigger announcement, or I should say leak, is in regards to the potential pricing for the RT and the RT Scat Pack, both in the Daytona variant. Now, this was a leak from a pretty big Mopar YouTuber called Butter the Insider. He posted it on Instagram, and then Mopar Insiders picked it up, and it's kind of been circulating along the internet. You've probably seen it. It shows off a build sheet from a dealership for a Dodge Charger Daytona RT and an RT Scat Pack, and it shows some of the pricing for the additional options that this vehicle is coming from. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is both of these vehicles are the first or launch edition models. And as in all cases across any manufacturer, when you have a launch edition or a first edition, it's always going to cost more. It's always going to be the most expensive version. And then over time, the prices do start to come down as you have more simplified trims with less features and accessories. So before you have a panic attack on this pricing, this is really like, if you want to be the first of the first, this is what you're going to have to pay. But it is very likely that if you wait a year or two, prices will likely come down. And this is also for those people that don't want to wait for any type of incentives because they want to be the first of the first. Now, I first want to talk about the pricing of the RT. Now, in the screenshot they displayed, the base price of the RT, and I have it right here in front of me, was $55,995. Now, there are a bunch of other features that were added to make a total price of $68,570. Now, some of those features include the direct connection E-Stage upgrade, the Plus group, which includes the leather seats, ventilated seats, heated second row seats. There's the Sun and Sound group, which includes an 18-speaker audio system. And there's a blacktop appearance package, which also adds dark accents. So what you can gather from here is the base price of this launch edition version is about $56,000 for the RT trim level. Then you can step up to the RT Scat Pack, and luckily there's pricing for this too. It starts around $64,995. This is again before destination pricing. And then after a bunch of features, it tops out around $82,170 for this specific build. It pretty much has these same exact features like the Sun and Sound group. There's also a track pack, which includes Brembo 6-piston brakes. There's the same Plus group with the heated and ventilated front row seats, and then the heated seats in the back. You have a carbon and suede package. Then there's the direct connection E-Stage 2 upgrade, which adds 80 horsepower and gets you the total 670 maximum output out of the Scat Pack. Now, people in general have been somewhat freaking out about the pricing, specifically, you know, these fully equipped models where we're talking $82,000 for a Scat Pack and about $69,000 for the RT. Couple things I want to break down here. First off, these are very well equipped vehicles, and based on the build sheet that I was able to find, it looks like the starting prices are a little bit more reasonable. We're talking $55,000, $56,000 for an RT, and about $65,000 or so for a Scat Pack. Now, I will fully admit that these are much higher prices than the gas versions of these vehicles. A RT Scat Pack in 2023 was around 51 grand, although realistically you'd probably be looking like 58 grand at the dealership lots. And then an RT was around 45,000, but again, probably realistically just under $50,000 on dealership lots. And so when you look at an RT with the electric powertrain versus the RT with the gas, it's a huge jump. I mean, we're talking $10,000, $15,000. This is where it gets a little bit complicated. The RT in the gas version is not a comparable powertrain to the RT in the electric version. They just happen to share the same name, but their power output is entirely different. The RT in the ICE version was under 400 horsepower. I think it was like 375. Whereas the RT in the electric version, not only does it have all-wheel drive, but it's also about 490 horsepower. That's more than the RT Scat Pack in the gas version. So a better comparison would be the RT in the electric or the Daytona versus the RT Scat Pack in the gas, because in terms of horsepower figures, those are much closer. And when you start looking at it that way, an RT Scat Pack in the internal combustion version was very similarly priced to the RT in the EV version. And the same goes for the RT Scat Pack Daytona. In the electric powertrain, it produces 670 horsepower and is supposed to do 0 to 60 in about 3.3 seconds and the quarter mile in about 11.5 seconds. If you look at those numbers, that's not comparable to the RT Scat Pack in the gas. That's comparable to a baseline Hellcat. In fact, the 0 to 60 numbers are better than a Hellcat because realistically, you're probably in the high 3s, low 4s because of the lack of traction. Maybe best case scenario, 3.5, maybe 3.3, but you really have to be a professional driver on a great course with great tires, whereas this, likely, given my experience driving electric vehicles, this is going to do 0 to 60 in 3.3 to 3.5 seconds all day long, especially with that all-wheel drive setup. So that's where I think a lot of people are confused about the pricing. They think it's very hefty, which it is. By no means is this an affordable car, but it is comparable to the gas versions that a lot of people were spending that money on. That being said, there is still the concern that electric vehicles have generally depreciated worse than gas engines. But if you could pick up the 2024 Dodge Charger Daytona RT Scat Pack for like 40 grand in 1 or 2 years, that's a steal. That's an amazingly powerful vehicle that is going to get you 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds and cost possibly less than 50 grand if the depreciation curve is the same for the Dodge products as it is for everybody else, which I imagine it will be, if not worse. But I wanted to clear some confusion with the pricing there. I really don't think it's an unreasonable price tag considering the performance they're offering. The other thing to mention here is if you look at the competitive set, so we're talking 4-door electric sedans, which there's really not that many of because there's not very many sedans in general. The pricing is pretty similar. I would compare the Charger Daytona to a Tesla Model S. They're probably pretty similar in terms of wheelbase. I think the Charger might actually be a little bit bigger. And they offer, seating for 5. They're a sedan-like shape. They're still that same hatchback shape like you find in the Tesla Model S. And when you start looking at pricing, the Tesla Model S in the dual motor starts around $75,000, 0 to 60 in about 3.1 seconds, which is very similar to the Dodge Charger Daytona RT Scat Pack, which starts around $65,000. In fact, it's almost a little bit more affordable. Granted, if you add a few extra features, you're probably going to get a very similar price point to the Tesla Model S. If you look at the Tesla Model S Plaid, that's kind of a different category. That's about $90,000. And I would personally pick a Plaid over a fully equipped Dodge Charger Daytona that's, $84,000 or so on that build sheet, because then you're pretty close on pricing and your performance is going to be a lot better on the Tesla Model S. But if we're talking entry-level pricing here, it's pretty close. Also, if you take a look at the Porsche Taycan, that's also like a $100,000 vehicle. Now, I am comparing it to more premium luxury brands because there's not really a high-performance electric vehicle sports sedan in the regular car space. Toyota doesn't make it. Even Hyundai, they have the Ioniq 6, but it's not like a high-performance version yet. So there's not really a comparable in terms of just regular day-to-day brands. You kind of have to go upscale to Porsches, to Lucids, to Teslas, because that's the closest competitor set. And when you compare it to those, it's actually pretty well priced, if not below the pricing for those vehicles. So honestly, pricing does not surprise me like it does the majority of people out there. I think a lot of people are just looking at that headline price of a fully equipped version. But if you look at a fully equipped Hellcat, you're looking at over $100,000 just a couple years ago. And even though that one had higher output on paper in real world acceleration, you really couldn't get any of those types of numbers that you're getting from the Dodge Charger Daytona RT Scat Pack. And the last thing I want to mention is there is going to be the Dodge Charger 6-pack, which is going to be the internal combustion version. And I imagine that one's likely going to start under $50,000 for the base trim level. Now, I imagine in typical Dodge fashion, there's going to be multiple trim levels of this 6-pack version. It's probably going to be a higher output, lower output, yada, yada, yada. Dodge loves doing that. And I'm sure the price could hit $60,000, $70,000, maybe even $80,000 for one. But I'm sure if you're looking at an entry level one, you're probably going to get one that's maybe below $50,000, maybe even $45,000. I think Dodge would do well by pricing it competitively, especially given the most recent video I made about Stellantis, where they're selling some pretty premium priced vehicles that people aren't buying. And in today's economy, a lot of people want affordable vehicles. And I completely agree that the Dodge Charger Daytona is a very expensive vehicle, but again, that's not necessarily the vehicle that people who are price conscious are looking to buy. I think the Hurricane engine is probably that sweet spot, especially for those of you that want a little bit more of that muscle car feel with an internal combustion engine. Now, I'm going to reserve my opinions on the Dodge Charger Daytona, the EV, and the 6-pack until I get to experience them myself. I think a lot of people are prematurely hating this electric vehicle and even the inline Hurricane 6 without ever even experiencing one for themselves. They've never even sat in an electric vehicle. They never even sat in a vehicle that has the Hurricane inline 6. I don't get how you can hate something before you even try it. Now, I fully appreciate the fact that you're going to miss the V8. You're going to miss the sound. but there's other things that are benefits. The fact that you can take it in all weather is a huge advantage when you have all-wheel drive. The fact that you can line up next to a German competitor or even an EV and not lose in a 0 to 60 or a drag race is an awesome benefit as well. And so I'm all for it, but I do want to experience them myself before I have my final opinion on whether they're executed well or not. I am a little bit concerned about Stellantis's reliability and build quality, especially in the last few years. I have not been happy with the build quality of my Hellcat, and electric powertrains are complicated, they're expensive, and I'm a little bit worried that Stellantis is maybe going in a little bit too deep or more than they can actually handle. I mean, we've seen GM struggle with the same problem, and GM is financially much stronger than Stellantis is. So that is a big question in the air as well, but I think the Hurricane engine will perform well, and I'm sure that's going to be Dodge's volume seller. But what are your thoughts on the latest information that's dropped from Dodge over the last couple days? Do you like the sound of the Dodge Charger Daytona? What do you think about the pricing of the Daytonas? And are you going to be first in line to take delivery of one? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly videos. Also check me out on all the social media at Schwazy_. Until next time, everybody, hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.